So hello my friends, Devon Lennox here, PhotographyPX. In today's video, I'm going to walk you guys a full behind the scenes product photography photo shoot. All right, so here we are. Different section of my living room this time than the last behind the scenes product photography photo shoot. Slightly different, very much a different setup than the last one, but definitely different scenery than you guys may have seen previously. But ultimately, I'm going to show you guys the full lighting setup. I'm going to walk you guys through all the critical components on how to replicate this. It looks a lot more complicated than it is. But everything that you guys are going to be seeing here as I walk you guys through and as I show you guys the individual images on how they add up to ultimately give the end result that we were able to capture, how they actually play a pivotal role in actually blocking and flagging and removing light so that we can focus the light that we're actually pushing out from our strobe over here, which I'll talk about shortly. How we can push out that light to then really accentuate just our product, and then add a little bit of a glow and then have no light go towards the background. So first things first, let's actually talk about the light. So I'm gonna move over here a little bit. So right here, we're using a Paul C. Buff Einstein strobe. And this is the 640 watt Einstein strobe. And right now it is set to 100 watts approximately, which is a little bit over 1/8 of its total power. It's 640 watts in total. So, and we're dropping 1/8 of that power at a little bit over 100 watts. I think it's maybe I would imagine 105. Yeah, it's 105.6 watts is exactly what it is. It's set to. So it's a little bit over 1/8 of its power. We have on right here, this is a 4x1 foot strip box. And in this strip box, there's two different layers of diffusion. We've got a middle layer of diffusion here, an external layer of diffusion here, and then we also have an eggshell grid right here. And I will show you guys here shortly the full lighting diagram, but ultimately know that there's an eggshell grid here, which is going to control the spill of the light so that it doesn't spill, it doesn't blast out this way, it blasts out more like this way. It's very much more concentrated. So that's why I'm putting that on there right there. On set, you guys will see a couple of other things as well. You guys will see this janky little setup when it comes to basically I basically made an impromptu scrim is what this is. So these are actually see-through, they're curtains basically. They're just kind of curtains. There's two layers of these actually. There's two different layers. Each one I would probably say is 1/10 of an inch. They're just kind of silk curtains, as you guys can see. They're very much translucent. You can see through them. But there's two layers of that. And basically what's happening is the light is coming through here. It's coming through the two layers of diffusion that we have here, plus this eggshell crate that I mentioned before. And it's now coming through these two layers of the curtains, the blinds, curtains. And then it's gonna be spilling onto our subject, which is way back over here. You guys may be able to see our colognes way back over there. So essentially what this is happening, this is focusing the light so that it doesn't spill onto the background, which is black. And then right here, this is spreading out the light so that it's softer, and then it's also a bigger light, a light or diffusion of light. It's just making it larger because this is not very big. This is only 1 foot, but this right here is approximately 3.5, 4 feet. So it's making the light much larger. Outside of that, I'll kind of walk you guys through these individual. They're basically just sheathing. Essentially, sheathing is like kind of similar to poster board. It's just like the insulation version of poster board. You can get them from Home Depot, Lowe's, and any other kind of craftsman store. You can get these at art stores as well. You can definitely get them at Michael's or Blick Art Store if you're here in Las Vegas. But basically, these sheathings they're acting as flags, and a flag is something that blocks light from hitting a source, is what it does. So essentially, what I'm doing with this one right here. Some of the light would spill, and unfortunately, when I was doing the setup originally, some of that light was actually hitting the background. The background wasn't completely black, which was a no-go for me. So I put that one right there so that it doesn't reflect any of the light on the background. And we have another one over here, and that one is also combining with this one right here to basically eliminate all the background light from hitting the background of our black seamless Savage paper over there. What you guys may not be able to see is that I have my tripod right here. My tripod's about maybe 3 or 4 feet away from our cologne subject. And then the cologne is basically on my living room table. It's like 2 feet high. And then the cologne, I would say, is maybe roughly maybe 7 feet away from the backdrop. Again, I will show you guys here shortly the full lighting diagram, so you guys will be able to see the exact measurements. I will make sure I measure out all this stuff so that you guys have an accurate representation of this whole lighting setup. But suffice to say, it's probably about 6-7 feet if I would just eyeball it. And then there's another piece of insulation sheathing, which is on this side, and that's a reflector, which is going to give us a highlight on the side. So let me sit down right now, and I'll kind of start taking some photos here, just to make sure that I can kind of walk you guys through the whole lighting setup. I'm gonna selectively start removing these items so that you guys can see exactly what each one of these things is doing, and explain a little bit more of the decision-making process. I just want to explain kind of like what the lighting setup is, why it looks so complicated, what's it kind of doing. But now I'll show you guys a demonstration of what it actually is doing to the image. So I'm gonna sit down right now, connect my computer to Capture One, and we'll get started. Now would be a good time too. I'm going to show you guys on screen right now the full lighting demonstration and diagram through satellite. So on screen, you guys are going to be seeing the full measurements. You guys will see the height of the light. You guys are now seeing where I actually positioned some of these flags and reflectors, indicated by a black kind of poster board looking item in the program. You guys will see where my tripod is. You'll see where the subject is, and then how far it is from the background, and then my shooting position and my camera settings as well. So that will give you guys a little bit more insight on how this was actually set up. But now let me take a seat and we'll actually kind of get started shooting here. Mount my tripod and we'll get started. All right. So I do want to say as a preface, I'm going to be shooting tethered to Capture One Pro, and that is my tether shooting software of choice. You guys are welcome to use Lightroom if you'd like, but I personally use Capture One. I just like the interface a little bit better. I find that it works better when it comes to tethering, in my personal experience, when it comes to using Sony cameras. Sony does have their own remote shooting application, but my camera doesn't support that one, so I have no comment on that one. I would imagine it works just as well as Capture One, but I just use Capture One personally. Okay, so you guys will see, here I am in Capture One, and I'm just going to take the first image. So I want to say I'm manually focusing here. I'm kind of sitting in an awkward position, so I'm literally just going to eyeball this. But otherwise, I would like lie down on the chair, and I would get my eye to the viewfinder, and then I would critically manually focus. I do want to also say is that I'm using a tripod, and my camera is directly in the same exact plane, both from a height standpoint, but then also directly forward onto the Tom Ford cologne that we're shooting. It's not turned or tilted in any way. It's directly forward. I do have a level on my camera, which is making sure that it's completely level, both vertically and horizontally. I did the wrong planes there, but so there's no tilting or anything like that happening with the camera. And then I also set the camera to a 2-second self timer, so that whenever I press the shutter, there's no vibration, which would cause the images not to be sharp. So I'm using a self timer as well. So we get the absolute best image quality my camera is absolutely possible of shooting. You guys will see as well camera settings. I'll talk about that real quick. 1/100th of a second, ISO 250, aperture 6.3. I'm using 100mm macro EF Canon lens. Sony A7 Mark I is the camera that we're shooting with. So I'm gonna just take a photo. You'll hear the self timer go off. Okay. All right, and then on screen, you guys will be seeing that image. So one thing, my camera settings change. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna add this guy. I'm sorry, it's gonna block your view, guys, but essentially when you're shooting reflective objects, it picks up all of the reflections that you're seeing in the scene. So the reason why I'm putting this is actually from a microphone, but I'm putting this here because it's actually gonna basically absorb all the light, so there's no reflections. So let me just put that on there and just take the photo now. Okay, so now we have that completely dark image there. And one thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna change my camera settings a little bit. I'm actually gonna go to ISO 400, retake the shot. It's a little bit dark. Oh, my light didn't go off. Okay, hold on. Hold on, boys. Okay, there it is. All right, perfect. That'll work. It's not the exact same lighting setup that is the original golden image, but it's quite good. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm going to remove this first reflector that we have on this side, and then I'm gonna show you guys what this reflector was doing. If you guys notice on the screen, left-hand side, you will see this bright rim highlight on the left side of the cologne. This reflector right here was actually the reason why that reflection was occurring. So now I'm gonna take a picture without that reflector on the side, and you'll see the difference in the light that occurs because that reflector is not there. So you'll notice now with this particular shot, there's no reflection on that left side of the cologne. It's just missing that little bit of defining edge. It's just missing that. So that was the reason why I added the reflector. You could do this by maybe adding another light and kind of adding a snoot or something like that. I don't have those kind of equipment, so I was just like, okay, I need to get a light over there so we don't lose the cologne to the background. So now I want to show you guys one other thing, right? So I'm gonna remove this particular insulation seathing from this side, and I want you guys to look at how it changes the background. Like I had mentioned before, I put this over here because I didn't want there to be spill onto the background. I wanted it to be completely dark. But I'm gonna go over here right now and just kind of remove this and put this down, and I want you guys to look at the image top right and see what that's causing as a difference in the image. Okay. Okay, well, it's not spilling as much as I thought, but that's fine. It's still pretty black on the background. But that actually did quite a little bit different thing than expected. But originally when I was doing this lighting setup, the background was a lot brighter than what it is right now that you guys are seeing on screen. But ultimately that was there originally because there was a lot of spill that was occurring from the light onto the background, and the background was starting to turn into a kind of a light gray. For whatever reason now it seems to have been changed in some way, so that's fine. The next thing I want to showcase though is removing this main reflector that I have here though, and I want you guys to see the difference that makes. So I'm actually going to completely take this down. It is silver on that other side, so if I don't leave that as is, it's going to actually reflect light back into our scene. So let me take a shot now, and we'll see what that does. Okay, that is completely different. Oh, that's completely different. So I want you guys to compare this shot right here, 007 versus 006, and you guys can see, I mean, I actually kind of like 007. It's kind of an interesting look, but that's what that particular reflector was doing. It was making sure that none of the light from this, even though it has a grid, the whole eggshell kind of thing on it, making sure that it doesn't actually spill in the background, because if anything spills on the background, it's not going to be completely pitch black. And that's the main thing when you're shooting on a black background and you're doing this kind of product photography. You want it to be actually black. You could fix this in Photoshop and make it black, but ultimately if you can do this in one shot in camera, it's just making your life a lot easier. So that's what that particular reflector is doing. Now I want to show you guys what happens if you actually get rid of this softening, this ghetto curtain situation we have going on here. The ghetto curtain situation was here for a reason. But again, let me take a photo here and show you guys what that's doing. And you guys can see now the difference that makes. It's way contrastier. I mean, the light, I'll go back from, so let's compare 008 or 0008 versus 0007. You guys can see the difference in the light that happened, or that caused because of that. I took off this, this ghetto little curtain situation, this apparatus that I created. It makes a gigantic difference. The light is incredibly hard because of how far this is from the subject. It's just going to be a hard light. But ultimately, those key components right there were the components that were positioning the light where I wanted it to go. You guys will see the final image. Granted, I don't know what happened with the whole background. I did change lights before the shoot, so maybe that had something to do with it. But ultimately, you know, that those two like flags and those insulation panels were there because they were positioning the light to make sure it only hit the front of the cologne, and then that reflector was on the side to make sure we got that nice defining edge light on the left-hand side of the cologne. Those were all there for a reason. Absolutely, I tried a lot of different things to set this up so I can get a really good shot in camera. It took a lot of effort. It was about a 2-hour experience, but you know, ultimately that's what happened. So, but again, and I also want to show you guys, if I take away this as well, you guys will see the reflections I'm talking about. I'll show that as well. Oh. It's not as bad. Well, yeah, I guess it's not as bad. It's not quite as bad, but yeah, you can compare image 009. It's not quite as bad. When the light was coming through here, it had some kind of red glare from one of these insulation panels. It's not as bad as it was before, but yeah, it does make a huge difference when you're shooting reflective black surfaces. They reflect literally everything. This is glass, so yes, but I hope that behind the scenes was insightful. You guys will be seeing the full breakdown of that and the specific positioning. Again, if you guys need more insight and stuff like that, view the rendering that I showcased earlier in the video from Satellite. So you can see the individual measurements, and if you wanted to use more professional gear, then you can replicate it in that way. But I hope that gave you guys a lot of insight on how to do something like this with one light. You don't necessarily need to use the Einstein if you guys don't want to use the Einsteins. I prefer to use Einsteins because I just think they're incredible lights. But ultimately, if you guys wanted to use something cheaper than that and use something of lesser quality, you could probably still get the same exact result. Light is light at the end of the day. So outside of that, I mean, if you guys have any comments, questions, concern, let me know in the description below. I hope this kind of impromptu home product photography shoot was insightful for you guys and it added some value. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you found the contents of today's video insightful and added value to you. If you're new here, please consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Also, leave us a like and a comment in the description down below. Let us know if I overlooked something or I missed something covered in today's video. This is Devon Lennox. You know where to find us. Photography. .com.